Good evening and welcome to Family and Life's Breaking the Consensus, an interview with politicians, opinion formers, influencers that are largely ignored by Ireland's mainstream media. Tonight, I'm sitting here with the wonderful Fidelma Healy Eames. Good evening, Fidelma.
How are you, Paddy?
I'm good. Fidelma, you've been a Fine Gael councillor and senator, so I could posit there might be a deep blue shirt background there. Is there?
Well, I guess there was, for sure, in the sense that my family would have definitely voted Fine Gael traditionally, particularly on my father's side. To be fair, my mother's side came from the opposite side of the fence.
So it was a mixed marriage.
It was a mixed marriage.
Where did you come in the family, Fidelma?
I'm the eldest.
You're the driven one. They always say the eldest is the driven one.
Well,
you know, how many others were there?
There's 4 more, so I'm the eldest of 5.
The eldest of 5 children.
4 girls, 1 boy, and farming background. Grew up on a dairy farm in Mylaw. I know we have somebody here from very close to there, from Montbellew, where I went to second level school. So I suppose, to be fair, a Galway girl through and through.
You're the raven-haired Galway girl. So, after school, after secondary school, where did you go?
I went to college in Carysford, in Blackrock, to become a primary teacher.
Okay.
And then I started teaching in Athenry, in a place called Newcastle Athenry. Fabulous experience, I suppose. To be honest with you, it was like that community. I remember one man saying to me, it was like we adopted you, because I felt
you walked into a warm and
I felt I really
that
did.
You were part of.
I did belong there.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And then I met my husband, and we were very young, 23 and 24 at the time.
How did you meet?
Oh, God knows. Nothing special.
You're not going to tell us. Whatever it was, you're not going. That's fine. There are things we don't have to talk about.
So we then we went to the States for a few years. I suppose 3.5 years.
What did you do there?
I was teaching there, and
was that very different to teaching in Ireland?
It was, but not impossible at all.
Okay.
It was a great time, because you're in your mid-20s.
You'll do anything at that stage. You're immortal.
Invincible.
Yeah.
Invincible. You think that there's nothing impossible. And I went to college there and did a master's degree. So I came back then to...
Was there some... was this always seen as a temporary move? You were going to just go and do it for a few years and come back? You weren't a permanent...
No, I was very
feature.
committed to Ireland.
Yeah.
Always very... Like, I remember when I came back, I joined Save the West campaign.
Save the West.
With Polo Wheel.
Yes.
I don't know if people here would remember Polo Wheel.
I think people will remember Polo Wheel and Save the West.
Yeah.
It was a hot movement at the time.
Well, you know what? Yeah. He had fabulous ideas, because he was... he really wanted to bypass central government and get money into the regions, because he could see the disadvantage in rural Ireland. And I mean, it's still relevant today.
He was a man before his time.
He was a man before his time. And then when I ran for politics...
Was this the start of your political interest, was the Save the West and the inspiration that Paul provided?
Definitely. This was the early 90s. And it was a long time before I went into politics myself. But what would I say? I made a decision to come back from America.
Yes.
Because, like, we could have stayed there much longer, and I felt that if you wanted to be good for your country, you should be here.
Okay, that's
I know it, but a lot of people feel they're good for Ireland outside of Ireland. So I want to acknowledge that.
No, you had the advantage as well, of course. You come from a farming background. You were going back to a farm, and you were a teacher. Teachers are always in demand. Not everyone is that lucky. They don't all have that. All of our immigrants don't have that advantage that they can. But you were lucky, and you came back.
Oh, absolutely. And I mean, I probably appreciate it more now than I did then, because I was on a career break.
Yes.
So
you could slot right back in.
Absolutely. And when I think of the amount of unemployment in those years and immigration, let's face it, it's been part of our history.
Particularly in the west of Ireland.
Yeah.
The west has suffered more and longer.
Even though I will say this, whenever we met people in America, where were you from originally? It was always Cork, they said. Even though, of course, that was the older Irish person.
You had to ask, they still didn't have the accent.
No, it was kind of amusing, because I think one thing that struck both myself and Michael was that we met a lot of people in their 50s and 60s in America with regrets that they hadn't come home. And that was a motivator for me to
And
say,
it-
I don't want
that had to
to
be-
be that person, do you know?
And that had to be hard because for quite a lot of them, there was nothing to come back to.
Precisely. And you can sometimes leave things just too long, and it's
can.
not possible to move.
But the economic performance of Ireland for quite a number of years made it impossible for immigrants to come back. They couldn't get back into Ireland. There was nothing here for them.
Yeah.
Fidelma, what year did you run for the council?
204.
2004. So that's 2 years after the Fine Gael meltdown in 02, when Michael Noonan led the party to its most disastrous electoral showing of all time, losing 27 seats. So there was an air inside the party at that, because I remember, because sadly I also come from a deep Fine Gael background, there would have been an air at that stage of making a fresh start, rebooting the party. And so you got involved at that point.
Oh, definitely there was an air of that. I mean, in fact, I suppose I was part of the rebuilding of Fine Gael
Yeah.
under Enda Kenny. I mean, I remember those years rather well because we were in, it seemed like perpetual opposition. And I think
Fine Gael at that stage had been in opposition since the 1997 election, which they had lost by calling it, John Bruton called it 6 months too early.
that's right,
Yeah.
yeah. But I think that we thought we'd never get into power. And we really had a lot worked out, as in policies, etc. But it was difficult enough to sell Enda Kenny on the doors, I'll be honest with you. It was very difficult.
Was he a weak leader?
Was he a weak leader? Well, I think, from my point of view, he's proven himself to be a weak leader.
Okay.
I think he did.
And we'll get into this
I
because
think
you
he
have a
did-
particular history
yeah,
with
I think
Enda
he
and
did
Fine
some
Gael.
good things.
Yeah.
In terms of, you know, there was a building the country back up again after once we did get into power.
Well, you get
into
Fine Gael-
11.
Fine Gael comes into power in particularly
Difficult times.
difficult circumstances, but also very good circumstances for Fine Gael in 2011. They've now replaced Fianna Fáil. By 2009, Fine Gael replaced Fianna Fáil as the largest party of local government, and then in 2011, there's the meltdown to do with the economic crisis in the country. The banks had gone broke a year earlier, and in February 2011, Fine Gael almost, but not quite, sweeps to power. 76 seats, I think. Its best ever showing. Fianna Fáil reduced
99 in the parliamentary party then, when you add senators and MEPs.
Yeah.
It was huge.
And
And I think that's when the actual arrogance began.
do you?
I do, because the thing is, within the parliamentary party, there was such a demand to be chosen by members of the parliamentary party. It was almost like,
There was a huge,
pick me
there was a
Enda, pick
huge,
me
there
Enda.
was a huge amount of
So-
people and not enough jobs for them.
I think so. And look, I guess
I remember Simon Harris distinguished himself with his enormous support, unflagging support for Mr. Kenny. He was like a one-man cheering band.
well, if Simon at the time would have been very young,
He was, yes.
very young, and if I recall correctly, I don't think he was there in.
He was elected in 11.
Was
yes.
he there? He was there in 11. Oh yeah, because I was there from 2007.
Yes.
Yes, that's
You
right.
had been elected in the 2007 election.
In the
Sorry.
Shannon, no, the
Oh, in the
Shannon.
Shannon. You
Yes.
became a senator in
Yeah.
2007.
Yeah, exactly. So what I know, the one thing that Simon did do immediately was he nominated himself to take the minutes at parliamentary party meetings, and I suppose.
There's a man with a gift for getting noticed, isn't he?
Well, in actual fact, it's a job to be fair,
Yeah.
a lot of people don't want. And in the previous term, it was Pascal O'Donoghue that took the minutes. And in actual fact, it's quite a good move because you're positioning yourself right at the centre of all of the talk. So you're right in there. And sure enough, they've both been well rewarded.
So you were saying that there was, at this point, there's an arrogance creeping in. Very shortly, we saw that arrogance come to fruition. 2013, the Minister for Health at the time, James O'Reilly, proposes a bill, the so-called Protection of Life in Pregnancy Act. And this was an abortion bill. It legalised abortion in the case of suicide, but in a move that was regarded at the time as extraordinary. Kenny whipped the bill. He applied a 3-line whip to a conscience issue. You voted against the bill. What happened?
Well, that was a really tough time, being honest. What happened? I suppose we had hearings on the bill for, I would say, close on 6 months, from January to whenever that vote was. I think that vote was July.
Yes, I think
it was July 2013. So I listened to all the evidence. The evidence.
You're still a senator. You're not. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I'm a senator at this stage. I listened to the evidence from the obstetricians, from the psychiatrists, from the legal people. I listened to evidence from women who had had abortions, who chose not to, and regardless of the side of the ideology people came from, whether they were pro-choice or pro-life, there was absolutely no evidence to show or to prove that a woman who was suicidal and pregnant, that an abortion would save her life.
Now,
and
can I just stop you there?
Critical I listened and listened, Paddy, for that.
Yes.
That was awful important to me.
This is what I wanted to talk to you about. In the face of a whip, you didn't say, well, I'm voting for this, full stop, because the party mandates me so. You said, I'm going to listen to the evidence. And I remember you talking about this. You stood out. You stood out among your parliamentary party colleagues. You are very, very clearly trying to find out what was the best thing to do. You didn't actually seem to have an ideological position on the bill.
Well, to be honest, I suppose I'd always want to come down on the side of life.
Yes.
So maybe from that point of view, perhaps I'm a bit conflicted. But I think that's a very important part. Let's face it, we've all been given life.
Yeah. But you,
and if you don't have that life, where do you go?
You were making a decision to explore this, despite the fact that the party leader had made it clear that a whip would be brutally applied.
Absolutely. And I did discuss it with him in advance. And I also went to James Riley. And to be honest with you, Enda Kenny did not make much sense to me on the phone that day when I rang him.
Are there those that say that Enda Kenny finds struggles with sense?
Well,
but let's be charitable.
He just kept talking the whole time that all we're doing, Fidelma, is codifying the law. Yeah. Basically, back to the
Supreme Court decision
on the X case. And, you know, of course, the mainstream media, like the Irish Times, Miriam Lord, is like, oh, don't mention the floodgates, because one of the things we felt is that
coverage was extraordinary. This was where we saw the media take it on board as a campaign issue. There was no fairness at all in the coverage of that bill.
No, I guess we were seen as, and it's still, to be honest, they began to paint you as out of touch, belonging to another era, backward.
Against women, risking women's lives.
Now I have great difficulty with the line against women. Because honestly, you mentioned tonight there in your introduction that perhaps this evening there's a young woman in Carrigan-Shannon.
Yes.
Not knowing what to do and in a crisis pregnancy. I really feel very strongly that we are misleading women. Because, of course, the baby is defenseless. But the young woman is in crisis. And when you're in crisis, what you need is support and help, not to be told that an abortion will fix it. In the short term, I can see how it appears like you take the problem away.
It is a permanent solution to a temporary problem.
Yeah, but Paddy, the thing for me is life is a long time.
Yes.
Not a short time.
Yes.
And we are misleading people by saying that how are they going to feel in 10 years' time? How will they feel in 20 years' time?
Or 30 or 40.
Yeah.
I want to explore some of the issues surrounding life and where your views come from, but I would like to finish out the history of it. You vote against the bill, and within hours you were expelled from the Fine Gael Parliamentary Party. What was that like?
Well, you know what? I guess it hadn't happened to me previously, so I didn't know what to expect, to be honest.
You only get the one expulsion.
You only get the one expulsion. But what I do recall is, now thank God there was more than me expelled at the time. Paul Bradford was also in the Shannon with me, and there was
And I have to confess, I have I think about 35 years of friendship with Paul. We knew each other in Mochran Firma back a long time ago.
Okay, and then there was 5 more in the Dáil. But
But out of
I'll
that,
tell you what
you mentioned a parliamentary party of 99 people.
Yeah, there was 7 of us.
And 7 out of 99.
You see, what was really horrific about this is that we looked for a vote on conscience grounds.
Yes.
Just to be able to be given a free vote, just one free vote on this issue. Not to be instructed and whipped. And Kenny couldn't do it.
I would just...
And I want to say this, he still had the numbers. This is very important.
The numbers to pass
he had the numbers to get the bill through without us.
Can I just insert there that the same Enda Kenny had 5 years earlier refused to discipline Alan Shatter, who had broken the party whip to vote with the Greens to ban hair coursing. Fine Gael had whipped that bill as well. But when it came up in the parliamentary party meeting, Kenny said that hair coursing was a conscience issue and Mr. Shatter couldn't be disciplined.
So,
just to put it in context.
Yeah, to put that in context. And I think there you have the answer.
Yeah.
Because this was about power.
Yeah.
Enda is now Taoiseach, and he did not want his authority to be questioned whatsoever. And we were in power with Labour, and it was like Fine Gael were given the economic issues, Labour were given the social issues, and this was one we were giving to Labour.
You had to take the hit for the team.
That was it.
Now, subsequently, Fine Gael invested political effort and capital in making sure that you were not elected, didn't they?
Well, that was really rough. But could I just say before,
Yes, sorry,
before I
of
get on
course.
to that, one thing, what was expulsion like?
Yes.
Expulsion was tough. First of all, I always remember we were sitting in the Shannon. I can't remember what that debate was that evening. And down came the chief whip into the Shannon chamber with a letter for myself and a letter for Paul Bradford.
He couldn't wait.
From the Fine Gael parliamentary party, which had nothing to do with Shannon the business. And he couldn't wait. And in that letter, we were given our expulsion. It was
Paul Keogh TD.
Paul Keogh TD. It was pathetic.
The pride of Wexford.
That was pretty pathetic, actually, because, you know, there's parliamentary procedures and parliamentary processes, and there's parliamentary business, and party business.
Wasn't that urgent.
It wasn't
you
that
couldn't have
urgent,
waited.
exactly.
Now, subsequently, you ran in the 16 election. There was a concerted effort made by Fine Gael to make sure that you weren't elected, and you narrowly lost out.
Oh, narrowly. You must be joking. We were annihilated.
Were you not
Oh, no,
elected?
in 2013, I
2013,
lost
sorry.
out by 45
Yes,
votes. Yeah.
sorry, 2013,
Yeah,
I'm so sorry.
No, to
Got
be
the
honest,
dates wrong.
not one of us got
Yeah.
re-elected. Not one of the
Yes.
7 got re-elected in 2016. And I want to say this now. This is kind of important. We were, because I was elected under the Fine Gael umbrella, and, you know, very proud to be in 2011. I want to be straight
This
up
was
about
your
this.
party.
This was the party we worked very hard for, and we promised transformational change.
I was very proud of the fact that I was part of the team that delivered 3 seats in Carlow Kilkenny.
Well, there you go. Now, the party then went on to get, I think, 22,500 a year for me from state funds as a senator, and I think about 45,000 a year for TDs. When we were expelled, because we were elected under the banner of Fine Gael, they continued to get that money for us. So by the time the general election of 2016 came, they had quite a war chest built up, like probably 75,000 from me.
Which was all applied to make sure...
Which was definitely invested against us.
But you didn't let that loss define you. You've gone on to do other and interesting things. You launched a website called My Adoption Story. And I was reading it over the last couple of weeks, and it's incredible.
Just this time last year, actually, yeah.
Just this time. It's a year old.
A year old this month, yeah.
A year old this month. And the website deals with encouraging people to consider adoption. It gives people stories. What struck me was on your opening statement on the website, you talked about thanking the birth mothers of your 2 children for lifting the cloud of childlessness from your family. And I found those words extraordinarily powerful, but also indicative that you found childlessness very, very hard.
Well, I
Is it
think we
terrible?
both did.
Yeah.
We both did. And like, don't forget this story, our adoption story. It's not just my adoption story. It's a sight for many people.
For anybody
Yeah.
who's involved on any side of
and we
this.
have many stories online. And I'd love if people would look at it at some point. We have stories from adopted persons, birth mothers, adoptive families. There's another perspective. There's 4 perspectives anyway.
Yes.
But like, all of this predated my entry into politics. We adopted Niall, our son, in '94, and Ruth in 2000. Niall is Irish, and Ruth we adopted from Romania. Yeah, like, when I talk about the cloud of childlessness, I could tell it was a huge weight on us. It was a
hurt.
huge weight. And I suppose it's tough enough to talk about.
I'm sorry.
No.
Into an area
No.
because
but I think if I put it this way, I remember a wedding anniversary, and Michael said, it was like as if there was such a darkness there.
yes,
And it's interesting because when eventually we did adopt Niall, our son, I always remember the call from the social worker. It's really amazing because she said, "We have a boy for you." And I said, "Oh, I thought it'd be a girl." But anyway, we have a boy for you. And then she said, "And his name is Michael." And I said, "Oh." And then she said, "His birthday is the 10th of May." And I said, "Oh, you're looking at the wrong file." I said, "That's my husband's name and birthday." And they were the same.
No.
Yeah. It was just unbelievable.
Wasn't that a gorgeous coincidence?
It was unbelievable. And so then the way I'll explain this cloud of childlessness is that it just liberated us, having
You now
this
have
child.
a child.
Yeah. It just changed our lives. And then a few years later, we went through a second assessment for adoption. And at that point, there was hardly any babies available in Ireland. And so we decided to go for the foreign adoption assessment. And I remember we went to a Holy Communion party for my niece, and we met this other lovely family in Loughrea in the hotel. And it was Michael that met the woman, and then she had adopted a little girl from Romania, and she said, "I'll pass you on the agent's name," or whatever, the contact's name.
Yeah.
So I said, "Yeah, that'd be fine. Great." It seemed to
It's
be
another strand.
It
if
seemed to be so
something
easy.
happening,
But then Michael said to me, "I don't know." He says, "I don't think." He said, "We won the lotto once. We won't win it again." So that's to explain the cloud of childlessness.
That you won the lotto once, that you were that lucky.
Yeah.
That you
So,
got this wonderful child into your family. But you won the lotto a second time.
Did you?
You got a little girl.
Absolutely, yeah.
Can you remember that phone call?
Oh, well, that's a different call now. Let me see.
It's a different way of
It's
doing
a different
it.
way.
Yeah.
That was, I remember we got a video of Ruth.
Yes.
A video of Ruth. And, I mean, of course, this is another country now, and
Yes.
Michael was totally happy. He just, and at the time I was now driving 3 hours a day to work from Galway to Limerick every day.
That's a lot of
I was
commitment.
lecturing in Mary I,
Yeah.
and I thought, geez, I'll never do this alone. I can't do this alone. And then I said to him, "Michael, this is a life
Yeah.
we're being offered. This is a human being. That opportunity is something that you need to be very careful to say no to."
Yes,
So-
because you're turning down a gift of someone's life.
Absolutely.
Of a little person's life.
Absolutely. And I just said, "Look, let's make the trip. And don't make any commitment. Just let's make the trip and see."
Let's go out to Romania.
Yeah, absolutely. So we went out and we met a lovely social worker, fabulous guy. I always remember his name is Marianne. We're still in contact. He was 23 only. And at this stage now we're about 36, 35, maybe 36. So I said, we went out to the family.
Yes.
And we didn't bring Niall with us because we didn't know what conditions we'd be going into, and we didn't want to frighten him.
No, and he's a small child.
At this stage, he's about 5.
Yeah.
So anyway, we went into this lovely family. Ruth was with a foster family at this point, and we saw this tiny little baby. It was almost as if she was a newborn, but she was sitting up. She was that thin. But she was totally, the thing I loved about her was that she didn't need us. She was totally engaged by her surroundings. There was at least three other children in the family. And there was this one little boy who was also being fostered by this family, who kept running over to us. And she's only 6 months now at this stage. So I said we met her anyway, we met the family, and we said, her name that we were given in the file was Denisa. So I said to the family, what do you call her? And they said, oh, Ruth. And I said, oh, I thought it was Denisa. And they said, oh, yes, it was. But we brought her to our church and we had her blessed. And we called her Ruth because we knew she'd have to be capable of change. And that was the name.
Like Ruth in the Bible.
Yes. So they said it meant joyful and capable of change. Yes. So anyway, we left that family and I came outside with Michael and the social worker. And I remember breaking down. I said, I can't do it. I can't do it.
You can't leave her or you can't take her?
I can't take her. Because I said I'd have to give up my whole life to mind her.
She's such a tiny
little thing. And I did not know if Michael was in. I mean, adoption is a big decision.
You're being extraordinarily honest with us, and thank you. But at this stage, you're standing outside this place. The two of you haven't made a decision. You're facing the fact that this tiny little child is so dependent now that you're not going to be driving down to Mary I. That's all.
Well, I just felt that. So anyway, I always remember coming out and Marianne said, what's the matter? And I said, I'm not able to do it. And he said, Fidelma, you need to let in more light.
You need to let in more light.
Yeah. And he said, let's have tea. So we went for a cup of tea.
He must be Irish.
He was amazing and still is, and for a 23-year-old.
23-year-old man.
And and then Michael said to me, if it's me you're worried about, I'm in. And the clouds lifted again.
Isn't that wonderful?
Yeah, that is the truth.
That's the great moment out of that.
Yeah.
If it's me you're worried about, I'm in.
Exactly.
What a wonderful thing for your husband to say.
So today, I suppose I want to say really that when I knocked on a lot of doors in the course of politics, and when I'd meet single mothers, I take my hat off to those people. I do not know how they do it alone.
Yeah, it has to be extraordinary.
And I can see how they can seek out a lot of comforts, be it, alcohol or whatever, just coping, because really, it's great to have support.
You have to invest your entire life in a child.
Yeah.
Fidelma, that website talks about adoption, that there are ways, open adoptions, you can be in contact with the child. Is the website a success? Is it working? Is it having influence?
I'd like to think it is. I mean, a good lot of people have reached out to us. The website now I suppose it's a bunch of stories of people who've been adopted, who've sent us in their stories, of people who are like us, who are adoptive families, of birth mothers.
Birth fathers.
Such brave people. I really take my hat off to birth mothers.
Yes.
Because truly, they are our champions.
They are.
They are our champions.
You thank them on the site. That's where we got into this. You thank them for the gift of life that they give.
Yeah, well, we say the gift of life is in their hands.
Yeah.
And the irony is that in their greatest moment of despair,
yes,
it's probably also the greatest moment of hope.
And
because
joy.
It's the child.
They've got a child. But for many birth mothers, without support, without help, with immense social pressure, and now in this country, a government that makes it cheaper to have an abortion than to do anything else. There's huge pressure.
This is the greatest travesty of all, because I think what was really, why did I set up my adoptionstory.ie? It's because when I heard the hearings, you know, the
committee hearings,
committee hearings on the 8th,
yes,
I knew we were just going down the very same road again as we did in 2013. All of the evidence and no one listening.
yes.
So I had no faith in those hearings. I know they were totally
You had been through the
fixed.
system, and you were absolutely right.
They were totally fixed.
Yeah.
I was very disappointed with Catherine Noon's chairing. I know Catherine well. We were senators together. I just thought it was pathetic that you had 28 witnesses, for example, for pro-choice and maybe 5 witnesses for pro-life. There was no balance. So
This is the same Catherine Noon who told the media in Ireland that she couldn't find a pro-life doctor. Won't have to posit that she didn't look very hard.
well, you know, the thing is that, again, you know, I respect people's autonomy. I
Yes.
respect people's right to choose. But why weren't the alternatives put into the 8th committee as well? Why weren't people's stories around adoption, birth mothers who had successfully placed their child, maybe had met that child now? Do you follow me? Why weren't
One of
both
the things
sides
you
of the
say, one
story
of the things
told?
is that you make very clear on myadoptionstory.ie is that this is not the old-fashioned adoption with the child being wrenched from a mother's
Absolutely,
arms
yeah.
to disappear forever.
This is very important to say. Look, we met Niall's birth mother, and I'm talking about 94.
Yes.
So there's healthy adoption going on in Ireland definitely since the 90s, that's for
And
sure.
even earlier.
Yeah, and I'm sure
Yeah.
way back earlier as well. But we were assessed under the Hague Agreement.
Right.
Now, the Hague Agreement says that the birth mother's wishes are primary,
Okay.
and she makes her wishes in the best interests of the child. That is now in legislation. I was part of the team that enacted that legislation in
You were
Ireland.
involved in putting that into legislation
Yes,
here.
yes.
That
but
was a
we were-
great success. So you did have that great success out of being in the Senate.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Like,
Well
and to
done.
be honest with you, there's been lots of good successes. Do you know what I mean? Because you always try and make legislation a bit better for the people you're serving.
So the birth mother has the primary right to say, no, not that couple.
Well,
this
she makes known her wishes for
Yeah.
the child.
And they have to be respected.
Well, they do, and they
Yeah.
were. To be honest, I know how difficult it was, because I know in the matching process with myself and Michael,
Yes.
that was a big concern, because, you know, it's not easy go through for the birth mother to hand over a baby,
It's
nor
not.
is it easy for
An adoptive
an
couple.
adoptive couple either.
It must be terrifying
It's terrifying,
when
both sides.
you want the child so badly. You know, it
Well,
really
I know
must be.
we met Niall's birth mother.
Yeah,
And the first 45 minutes of that meeting were very tough.
yeah.
She didn't speak for 45 minutes. She cried for 45 minutes. And I thought, oh my God. Our social worker was there and hers was there. And I just said, please God, may she speak, or would it just help her? Because I didn't feel it was for us to be pushing in on her.
This is a woman who's sitting there in distress. She's pregnant at this stage.
No, the baby is born.
born.
And we were made.
Which in a sense makes it harder. She now has to decide to hand this baby that she's held.
Well, she wanted to meet us.
Yeah.
It was her choice to meet us. And we were more than happy to meet her. We were terrified. That's
can
the truth.
understand.
And anyway, eventually her social worker took her out for just, I don't know, to even a bathroom break, whatever it was. And when she came in, we spoke for 45 minutes incessantly.
Wasn't that wonderful?
It was fabulous. And the amount of common ground we had was unbelievable. And we felt that she was so not ready to give up her child,
Yes.
that we said to her, you don't have to.
You are actually telling her, you don't have to give up this child. You can keep your baby.
We were saying that to her, and we said,
Even though you desperately
I
wanted
know,
a
but
child.
that day her needs, in our view, were bigger than ours. The following day was a different story.
Yes.
But anyway, we said to her, you don't have to.
Yeah.
He's your baby. And then she would have definitely kept Niall. And she's told him this since, because he made contact with her in the last year and a half, that she never wanted to give him up, but she had no support.
She had no support.
Yeah, she didn't have the support of a partner. And she said she was a middle-class girl. She'd done a degree in Galway, actually, and was about to embark on a master's. And she said that she didn't want to resent him. She never wanted to blame him.
For stopping her doing things.
And she could,
and at the same time,
she felt
even then,
she couldn't do it alone. But I will say this now. I want to say this about the health board then and now. They gave her every chance. The first step is to help the birth mother keep her child.
That's
only right. And only right. So we are totally secondary in the process. And that is only right. So anyway, we then spoke to her, and she said, we asked her, was she happy with us? And she said she was. And it's interesting because Niall and herself have now exchanged letters.
That's wonderful.
And she describes the meeting exactly as it happened. And she said to Niall in the letter to him a year ago, I knew you were getting the right family when they thought of me more than themselves.
It's not absolutely wonderful.
Yeah, it was fabulous.
Almost 23
years later,
she still can remember that you cared for her in that room that day.
But she also goes on to talk. She's had 2 other little girls now. And
so Niall has
he has 2 half-sisters. Now, he hasn't met them yet,
but in time.
But she also goes on to say that when she had her second child, the nurse offered to maybe carry the baby for her to the car, and she said she nearly lost her life.
The thoughts of giving that child at this point.
Yeah. That she said she'll never forget leaving the hospital without Niall. She thought the corridors would never end. It felt like miles.
Yes, she was, when you put that in context, she was leaving Niall alive, safe, and with a family she had chosen. What sort of emotional baggage are we leaving with women who leave the modern mother and baby home of the abortory?
I know.
What are we doing to women? Fidelma, you're a passionate supporter of adoption. It's hugely important now after the 8th.
And I know so many good families that have been transformed, and I know every side of this story.
You do.
Insofar as I can.
myadoptionstory.ie is worth looking at. It's a great site. You should be reading it.
And just to say, I suppose, on the anniversary now, we've just brought out 2 little posters, because people are saying to us now, look, we want to let people know that there are alternatives to abortion. Because the truth is, what's really wrong is that abortion is becoming the narrative.
Yes.
As if it is the only way.
It's an enforced narrative.
And it's an enforced narrative. So anyway, we basically have this a little poster. It's in a crisis pregnancy if you're unsure.
I'll just hold that to the camera.
There's another way.
There's another way, adoption. And do you have a second one?
And then we just have 2. It's the message is the same in both. But, this might be suitable for maybe colleges or universities. This might be suitable for doctors' offices or church porches or whatever. But the point is, we just need to just say, don't close your mind. That's the only message we're saying. Don't close your mind to adoption, because the current minister, Catherine Sapone, is not good on this issue. We've also set ourselves up as a lobby group, and we were due to have a meeting with Catherine Sapone about myadoptionstory.ie and who we wanted to reach, and twice that meeting has been cancelled.
So
it was agreed
the
to.
Minister for Children does not seem to be terribly willing to meet one of the few groups in the country with expertise in adoption.
There's another group as well, by the way, called
surprised.
AHANTS, AITHEANTS, and they are looking for recognition for people who have been adopted to get their birth cert. It's as basic as that. And myself and Senator Abel Power...
I'm aware that there are issues surrounding birth certs, because in some cases mothers would have been assured that they will not be traced except through a social worker, and that might leave them open to being doorstepped. So there may be issues there.
Well, being honest with you, we brought out a bill, myself and Abel Power and Gillian Van Turnout, in 2014-2015 around the right to a birth cert. But we were we drafted now with a constitutional
Yes.
lawyer, and we very carefully were balancing that right of privacy of
Yes.
the birth mother. So there was going to be at least 6 months where the birth mother would be informed that her child wanted
A meeting.
a meeting if she wished,
Yes.
or not necessarily, but the birth cert.
The birth cert.
And so
Could a birth mother refuse to be acknowledged on the birth cert at that point?
I don't think a birth mother could be refused, but like birth fathers have,
Yeah.
you
Just-
know.
I want to, this is hugely interesting, but you had a life after politics. What did you do after 2016?
Oh, you mean now?
Yes, you went back teaching, I
Yes,
understand.
I am teaching, yes. I'm actually currently an acting principal of a school. It's in Bawnmore. It's Bawnmore National School near Clare Galway.
Okay.
Fabulous school, and lovely teachers, children and parents. So I'm only there now
You
since
spoke to me about it
Halloween.
earlier and you saad that you had some of the best staff in the country.
I think I do, yeah. Yeah.
You're very proud of them, you said.
They're just super people.
Yeah.
Now that's a long story. I've been doing. It was tough, being honest with you, because I resigned my teaching post in politics. I didn't
take it. You didn't do what Enda Kenny did. Mr. Kenny took a career break that lasted for what, 35, 40 years?
I think good for
Yes.
you anyway.
You couldn't go back automatically to teaching. You had to apply again for a job.
Absolutely. I went back to the square one, got registered as a teacher again with the Teaching Council, and started at the bottom. And I was shocked that with people's reaction, they were surprised I'd go back teaching. And I'm like, this is what I do, this is what I am.
I am a teacher.
Do you know? And so I did some sub-teaching, and then after about a year, I went back into teacher education, which is what I had been doing. So I've been doing work for Hibernian College, supervising student teachers, and then I got a call last autumn to see if I'd consider this position.
As acting principal in Bawnmore.
Yeah, but I obviously went through
Yes.
the process and applied,
Yeah.
etc., etc. So I'm only there now until the end of this year.
Yeah.
And
But you're very happy there.
oh, I love it. I love it. Yeah.
I know you're happy there, but it's not a thing that in the last couple of days when this interview was publicised on social media, I got 3 different phone calls from people in the west of Ireland saying that they had been trying to pressure you into running for Europe. And would I, in this interview, put some pressure on you? Now, I am well aware that I am not in a position to pressure somebody of your independent mind. I know several groups have asked you to run. Are you considering a run for the European Parliament?
Well, no, certainly it's been mentioned to me. There's no doubt about that. And I mean, there's lots of reasons to run. There's lots to be done. And 85% of our legislation does come from Europe.
And you still have Polo Friel's work to do in terms of getting money into the regions.
But you know, the thing is, I bet you've been asked yourself to run, Paddy. There you go.
I haven't even been asked to run for the County Council, Fidelma. People know me much better than that I don't have those capabilities. You're a completely different creature.
Well, I mean, certainly I've been honoured by the fact that people have asked me to run. I haven't made my mind up at all.
No decision has been taken,
absolutely
but there is a possibility that we might see you out there for the European hustings.
Oh, I don't know about that yet.
I think that would be wonderful. You would be an outstanding candidate. This has been an extraordinary interview, and thank you very much.
Thanks very much. Thank you. Appreciate it. Cheers. So